So it's been 1 year with my X100V, and I'm sure you're wondering, what are my thoughts on this camera? Spoiler alert, it's pretty damn good. What's up everyone, Reggie B Photo here and welcome back to the channel. So for those of you who are new, my name is Reggie Ballesteros and I'm a wedding photographer based in the San Francisco Bay Area. So just to give you all a little bit of context, I got the Fujifilm X100V right on the day that it came out when it shipped to camera stores on February 27th. And in order to really get my bearings on the camera, I challenged myself to shoot an entire engagement session just with the X100V. Long story short, it did an awesome job and it handled it its own for portraiture. But a couple weeks after that portrait session is unfortunately when the pandemic hit. And while I had planned to use the X100V as sort of kind of like a behind the scenes or getting ready shots during a wedding day, I ultimately didn't get those opportunities because a lot of my weddings got canceled, a lot of my shoots got canceled or rescheduled, and I basically had the camera for a year not really doing the work that I thought I was going to use it for. Instead, over the course of having this camera, I used it to document my family and just kind of our time at home during kind of like the pandemic, the lockdown, as well as the times that we went out. It was pretty much the only camera that I brought with me most of the time. And you know what? Because of that, I've kind of made the conclusion that really this camera is probably my favorite camera that I ever used ever. My ultimate conclusion is that this camera is really the best camera for anyone that wants to do any type of family documentation of their family at home as they grow or as you go out on travel and you kind of make those memories with your family. And here's why. So the first thing is this camera is not intimidating. I mean, look at it. It's small, it's compact, it's really a low friction item to bring with you. You can just pick it up, you can bring it with you. It fits in a bag. You can, try to carry it in a pocket, but here I have this little strap right here to just put around my wrist. And it's something that, people always say the best camera is the one that you have with you. That's kind of a generalized statement, but in this case, this camera I always bring with me, and I'm always able to take good quality photos if I don't want to just settle for my camera phone or my iPhone or anything like that. And the other thing too is I used to use my Fujifilm X-T3 with the 16mm 1.4 as my kind of personal, let me get it out right now. So I used to use this as my personal camera. I mean, you can kind of see like the size difference. The X100V is a lot smaller than the X-T3 with the 16mm 1.4. And it's also a lot lighter. Having this as a daily camera to document my family actually just opened up a world of more opportunities. I didn't feel like I had to leave it at home as the camera's too big or anything like that. And I think the really big factor when it comes to kind of not being an intimidating camera when it comes to documenting your family, because I have a lot of little kids in my family, not just my immediate family, but in my extended family. And sometimes they're not too open to having the camera being pointed at them or to be taking photos, or they get self-conscious or get scared of it. The Fujifilm X100V's silent shutter is pretty awesome. It's so silent, and it's silent in the mechanical mode. You don't have to use electronic shutter and risk any type of banding and stuff like that. So here's a comparison. So here's the Fujifilm X100V. Here is kind of like the same thing, but with the X-T3. So it's kind of obvious. Like the X100V is a lot more silent. So if being subtle, if not drawing attention, or maybe if you're a beginner and you don't want to kind of draw attention to you learning and experimenting, X100V silent shutter, hands down, is probably one of the best features that not a lot of people talk about in comparison to the other things that are updated. So the next thing I want to talk about is this camera has all the modern bells and whistles to keep up with any situation you throw at it, and it's also going to last for a long time. So it's got the updated sensor and processor that kind of matches with the X-T3 and the X-T4, but since I have an X-T3, I don't have to have any wondering or issues or kind of like dilemmas about like, is the quality going to be the same? It is the exact same image quality that my X-T3 is going to give me, same pretty much autofocus performance as my X-T3. And I really don't have any doubts to use it in a wedding situation if my weddings actually happen this year. But its autofocus speed is actually, I've noticed that over time it's actually pretty good. So I would say that the most challenging situation for any type of camera autofocus system is the infamous toddler test. So a toddler kind of like running at you full speed and trying to catch those kind of action moments where they're poking straight at your camera really close up. The X100V keeps up with that, and if you stop down a little bit, it's for sure going to be able to do it. And you can also, the times that you don't have focus, for some reason this camera, the image quality just looks filmic, where those subtleties of not being perfect actually just give it a little bit more characters. This isn't going to fail you. This isn't going to limit you as far as image quality or performance goes. It's going to be down to you as a photographer. And I think another thing too that's a really breath of fresh air, a lot of people are going to kind of grill me on this saying that the app sucks, but for me, for some reason, the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi connection on the X100V has been the best performing kind of Wi-Fi experience that I've had on any Fujifilm system. I shoot in RAW plus JPEG and just send over JPEGs. I'll post it to my Instagram story, or send it to my wife to show her, or send it to my sister-in-law after I go take photos at their birthday party for her kids or something like that. And it's rock solid. It goes over fast. For me, that's a crucial part of me using this camera, is being able to look at the photos and send it off to people on the day of within minutes of taking that photo. And for somebody that's documenting their family, that's important. It keeps you connected and social rather than waiting like, oh, just wait till I get home and I edit these, because I still do edit them at home. But I think having that JPEG workflow on the field is something that's important, and with the X100V, I think it does well. So I think one other modern thing that this camera has that a lot of people don't really buy the X100V for is for video. So yes, it does get a little hot when you run video for a long time. So what I use it for is quick moments, like 1 to 2 minutes of somebody blowing out the birthday candles, or my kids playing, or seeing, kind of documenting the stage of when my son starts to eat solid foods for the first time. And I don't really want to go out and get another camera. I just set it usually to autofocus single so that the autofocus isn't hunting, and I set in my exposure and just kind of lock it in, and I just kind of sit there and I really focus on keeping it stable, because it doesn't have IBIS, but it's not really a big issue if you can be a little bit stable, or if you can just kind of like hold it like this. And then you can just, document these little moments that sometimes sound would help, or motion would kind of better document what's happening, that a still photo can't. X100V comes in a pinch for these types of situations. One favorite thing that I have about this camera, and especially the reason why I picked it in the silver and black colorway, is because it just has this nostalgic look, and it just feels familiar. When people see this, they know it's a camera, and it's a camera that's kind of like cute and quirky, and the ones that they think of when they think of camera in their head, not like the big bulky scary looking techno advanced camera. It almost looks like a film camera, and I think that helps people to kind of be at ease. It doesn't look like a spaceship. It looks like a film camera, and I like that. And I think it becomes a conversation piece to a lot of people. Even an uncle that I have that isn't really into cameras, they're like, hey, is that a film camera? It gets them talking about it, and it shows that they are not intimidated to talk to you about what you're using, what you're shooting with. You can show them what it looks like. You can let them try it. And it helps kind of break down that kind of ominous feeling when a camera's put up to your eye. Then they'll feel more comfortable because I tried it, I looked at it, it's pretty cool, and they'll allow you to kind of document them in those spaces naturally, rather than if you had some crazy big rocket launcher looking thing. You blend in a little bit more. It feels like a familiar friend rather than some awkward professional photographer that got hired to be within these types of environments. And an important thing when it comes to taking pictures of your family is being able to kind of get in the photo sometimes. I admit I haven't had that many photos of me in the picture, but for the most part, it's super easy for you to hand off to somebody else to use. You can set the dial straight to A and let them go at it. Or for my wife, for example, who's familiar with manual controls, she's able to use it and it makes sense to her. And the cool thing is I've even handed it to my toddler to take photos of me, and he's been able to take photos of me. It really works like that. It's fun, it's intuitive, and that speaks to the user experience experience of the camera, it makes sense on how to use it. And it caters really to any skill level. I love Fujifilm cameras because you can change the way it operates within a couple flips of the dials. So you can hand it off to complete beginner to take a picture of you, or you can have it dialed in for your specific vision once you take it back. So the last thing I want to kind of talk about is this camera is extremely versatile. So it's versatile in the sense that you get a fixed high quality 23mm f2 lens. So you can handle low light situations if you need to. The high ISO is very great, all the way up to like 12,800 like the X-T3 and the X-T4. And the 23 focal length is really great for documenting those scenes. Any type of documentary scenes, you got it. 23mm focal length is kind of like the threshold that you'll be able to shoot that can take wide angle portraits without having too much distortion. And the cool thing is this lens also focuses very closer as far as magnification ratio than the 16mm 1.4, which a lot of people love for its faux macro abilities. The 23 can actually resolve a little bit bigger, so it gets really close to, you know, Legos and anything like that. You know me, I like to take photos of Legos. You can use it for all these situations, and it'll really broaden your perspective. Once you're stuck with just this, you can figure out how you're going to take all these different types of scenes, whether it's a travel scene, portrait of your kid, a documentary scene that's just happening out in the environment, street photography, if you're into that. Like, obviously I'm not a street photographer, but this is renowned for street photography, so you can tackle all these situations. And I think the cool thing is, if you pick up one of these little guys, the TT350 by Godox or the V350 by Godox, you can just slap it on, and then you can just like bounce it off to the corner. You can use it to control an AD200 wirelessly using this as a master. It just opens up so many possibilities. Just these two items alone, you're off to the races. And I think the one other thing that really, if you've seen my behind the scenes work, I almost always like to use the tilt screen for, you know, the low angle shots, the high angle shots, and this has it. And that was one of the biggest additions to the X100V series, or sorry, the X100 series with the V, is the tilt screen, and I use it all the time. So going from the X-T3 over to the X100V is not an issue. I think the only slight negative thing I have about the camera, it's not a negative, it's just kind of like a brain hiccup that I have, is I shoot a lot of portraits sometimes, and with the X-T3 I like to flip it up for the, you know, the vertical portrait, low angle, and this camera doesn't have it. So you'll notice that when I take vertical photos that are very low, it's not level, because I can't really see the electronic viewfinder. I don't like getting down on the ground. If they did add that, I'd be okay, but I think that would compromise how like kind of seamless the screen sits against the camera, and I don't know if they'd be able to pull that off still. So I'm okay with them not having the vertical low angle mode. Not gonna say that I wouldn't be happy if they included that, maybe on the next iteration, but for right now, the X100V it's the ultimate package for a camera, on a Fujifilm camera, or just any digital camera for that matter. So who is this camera for? I would say if you're a current Fujifilm owner, there's not really any reason to not pick one of these up as an addition to your kit. You can decide how you're going to use this. I use it as a personal camera when I want to do stills only. The XS10 is more of my hybrid personal camera, but I use this a lot more because I'm primarily a photographer. If you are a parent of young children, or you even have older children, but you want to have a family camera that documents everything, that you can take everywhere, that you don't have to worry if it's going to be able to properly document your family's memories, this is the camera. I'm telling you, this is the camera. And you'll notice that everyone who has a review of this camera, even if they're professional photographers, they have personal photos taken with this too. So there's a reason for that. It's not a coincidence. And if you're a professional photographer who wants a camera to use when you're not working, so, you know, kind of like a breath of fresh air that's different than the kind of kit that you use, maybe you shoot full frame, medium format, whatever, you want something small that just feels different, looks different, and is fun, this is a camera too that you can use. You can use the dials all manually. You can turn off the EVF, so you're just looking at the optical viewfinder, and you can make it feel different so that you're refreshed, so that you can come back on your gig and do the job that you need to do. In general, the X100 series will always hold a very special place in my heart, mainly because the X100S was my very first Fujifilm camera. Well, it really wasn't my camera. It technically was a gift to my wife, and I will come out clean and say, if I had to sell all my other Fujifilm cameras. I have my X-T3 for work, I have the XS10 for video, but if I had to sell all of them, I'm confident in saying that this is the one that I'll keep regardless. X100V is hands down my favorite camera that I've ever used and shot with. I'll go on record for that. If I've convinced you, if you want to pick up this camera for yourself, because I really think everyone should, I have affiliate links down in the description below. If you want to pick up an X100V, if you want to see more videos like this, please give it a good old thumbs up. And I turn it to you. What is your favorite camera for documenting your family, for doing personal work? Are you fans of the X100V, the X100 series? Are you using a different type of camera? Do you shoot with film? And as always, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. I make a new Fujifilm or photography video every week. If that's too long for you, be sure to follow me on Instagram at ReggieBPhoto, as I'm dropping new tips, tricks, tutorials, and behind the scenes videos every single day. Alright, that's it for me. Remember to get out, go shoot, and I'll catch you all in the next one.